The restaurant had been designed to make people feel small. Low ceilings, dark wood, narrow aisles, everything pressed inward, forcing attention toward the center tables where the real power sat. The walls were lined with old photographs. Men in suits shaking hands with ghosts, faces blurred by time but not by consequence. Every chair had heard confessions. Every floorboard had absorbed blood at least once. The woman moved through it all without a sound. She wore black from collar to ankle, the uniform tailored to a race shape and presence. Her hair was pulled back so tightly it pulled at her scalp, a mild, constant pain she welcomed. Pain kept the mind sharp. Her shoes were soft-soled, chosen not for comfort, but silence. She carried a tray balanced perfectly on her palm, wrist aligned, elbow relaxed. A waiter would have gripped it. A server would have glanced down occasionally. She never did. Her eyes were always up, not staring, not scanning, just aware. She noted who leaned back too far from the table, who sat stiff with their hands hidden, who touched their glass too often. She catalogued accents, breathing patterns, the subtle delay between thought and speech that betrayed lies. None of it showed on her face. To the men in the room, she was furniture that moved, and that was the point. At the center table sat Luca Moretti. He didn't speak much. He didn't need to. The room responded to him the way a body responded to pain, instantly, involuntarily. Conversations adjusted their volume around his presence. Laughter died when his eyes lifted. Decisions were postponed until he nodded. He wore a white suit tonight. An arrogant choice. Or a deliberate one. White showed blood. He had survived long enough not to fear it. The woman approached his table and poured wine into his glass. She stopped exactly half a centimeter from the rim, the surface tension, trembling but never spilling. The men around him didn't notice. Luca did. He didn't look at her face. He looked at her hands. They were steady. Not the forced steadiness of someone afraid to make a mistake. Not the nervous rigidity of inexperience. They were relaxed. That registered, filed away, but didn't linger. Luca Moretti processed thousands of details a day. Only threats earned more than a second. She moved on. Behind her, conversations resumed. Mentions of ports, of shipments delayed at customs, of a rival family pushing too close to neutral territory. Names were never spoken directly. They didn't need to be. She heard everything. At another table, a younger man laughed too loudly. His jacket bulged on one side. He kept touching it, checking. He was new, proud of being trusted with a gun, dangerous mostly to himself. She adjusted her path so she wouldn't pass too close. Risk management. She had been doing it longer than any of them could imagine. The smell of garlic and wine, mixed with something sharper. Gun oil, faint but unmistakable. It clung to men who carried weapons daily, soaked into leather holsters and skin. The woman breathed it in and out without reaction. A memory tried to surface. She pushed it down. This life was simpler. Carry, serve, leave, disappear. The mistake came when she reached the end of the long table. One of the captains, mid-30s, expensive watch, cheap eyes, leaned back as she passed. He had been drinking. Enough to loosen restraint, not enough to dull reflex. He reached out and caught her wrist. Not hard, not yet. "Hey," he said, smiling like it was nothing. "You walk like you're scared of the floor." The table chuckled politely. Her body reacted before her mind. A spike of adrenaline, a tightening in her core, weight shifting subtly to her back foot. She stopped herself. Slowly, she turned her head. "I'm sorry, sir," she said. Her voice was neutral, flat, accentless in a way that belonged nowhere. He tightened his grip. "You spill something on the boss," he continued, nodding toward the far end of the table. "You don't get to just walk away." She followed his gaze. The corner of Luca Moretti's white suit sleeve was stained red. Wine. She hadn't felt the tray tilt, hadn't registered the collision. That bothered her more than the man holding her wrist. "I'll clean it," she said. The captain laughed. He pushed her backward. The tray tipped. Glass shattered against the floor. The sound cracked through the restaurant like a gunshot. Silence followed. Every man turned. Luca looked down at his sleeve, then up at her. The woman stood frozen between instinct and survival. She knew what was about to happen. She had seen it before. A scapegoat offered to soothe wounded pride, a display of control to reassure the room. The captain stepped forward, anger flashing now that attention was on him. "Clumsy bitch," he said. "You'll pay for that." His hand rose. That was when she lost control. Not emotionally, physically. Her body chose efficiency over invisibility. She twisted her wrist, stepping into him instead of away. Her free hand flicked forward, fingers snapping with precise torque. The butter knife left the table. It crossed the room in a blur and buried itself in the wooden pillar behind him, with a sound like a closing door. The captain stumbled back, pale, his hand dropping instinctively to his throat. The woman stood still. The tray lay shattered at her feet. No one breathed. Guns came up in unison. Luca Moretti raised one finger. They lowered. He stood slowly, adjusting his stained sleeve as if nothing extraordinary had happened. His eyes locked onto hers. Not anger. Interest. What? He asked softly. Are you? She looked at the knife, then back at him. A waitress, she said. The lie tasted thin. And Luca Moretti smiled for the first time that night. No one moved. The knife still trembled in the wood, a faint vibration humming through the pillar as if the room itself hadn't decided whether to breathe again. The captain stared at it, his face drained of color, one hand hovering uselessly near his chest. He hadn't even realized he'd let go of her wrist. Luca Moretti took one step forward. It was a small movement, unhurried, but it rearranged the room. Chairs scraped back instinctively. Men straightened. The gun stayed lowered, but hands remained close, fingers brushing grips, waiting for permission to finish what shock had interrupted. Luca stopped an arm's length from the woman. Up close, she looked younger than he had expected. Late 20s, maybe early 30s. No jewelry, no visible tattoos. Her uniform was plain, almost deliberately unflattering. But her eyes were wrong. They didn't dart, didn't plead, didn't glaze over in fear. They assessed. How long, Luca asked calmly, have you worked here? 8 months, she replied. Not too fast, not too slow. And before that? She hesitated, just long enough to register as human. Other restaurants. A murmur rippled through the room. Disbelief, curiosity, the thrill of something unexpected breaking routine. The captain found his voice again. Boss, she assaulted me. Luca didn't look at him. Did she, Luca said, still watching her, hit you? No, but… Did she cut you? No. Then Luca said, finally turning his head, sit down. The words weren't loud, they didn't need to be. The captain obeyed. Shame and fear warring across his face as he lowered himself into his chair. He avoided looking at anyone, especially her. Luca returned his attention to the woman. That throw, he said, nodding toward the knife, wasn't luck. No, she said. A few men shifted at that. The admission landed heavier than denial would have. Luca studied her posture. The way her weight was balanced evenly, ready to move in any direction. The way her hands hung relaxed at her sides, not clenched, not fidgeting. Training revealed itself in absence as much as presence. You know, Luca said mildly, how many people in this room could hit that pillar from that distance? She didn't answer. He smiled faintly. 3. Her expression didn't change. But none of them, he continued, would have done it without first deciding whether killing him would cause more trouble than it solved. The room felt colder. Luca reached out and with 2 fingers plucked the knife from the wood. He inspected the blade, the butter still smeared near the handle, absurd against the violence implied. You chose control, he said. Not fear, not anger. He offered the knife back to her. Their fingers brushed for half a second. Something passed between them then. Recognition, maybe. Or warning. Clean yourself up, Luca said. She inclined her head and turned away, stepping carefully around the broken glass. Her heart was beating faster now, but not out of panic. Out of irritation. She had broken the rule. Never be remembered. In the narrow corridor behind the dining room, she leaned against the wall for exactly 3 breaths. The hum of refrigeration units filled the silence. Her reflection in a steel door looked the same as always. Plain, forgettable. But the mask had cracked. She washed her hands slowly, scrubbing away wine, butter, and the faint sweat of adrenaline. Her mind replayed the throw, the arc, the angle. Too clean. She should have missed by more, should have made it look sloppier. Old habits died hardest under pressure. When she returned to the dining room, the energy had shifted. Conversations were quieter, tighter. Eyes tracked her now, some with suspicion, others with something closer to hunger. Luca had resumed his seat. He gestured to the chair beside him. I didn't say sit, he said. I said come back. I'm working, she replied. The corner of his mouth twitched. So am I, he said. Sit. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse. Proximity was dangerous. Attention was fatal. but refusal would be louder than compliance. She sat. Up close, Luca Moretti smelled like expensive cologne layered over iron and smoke. His presence pressed in, not physically, but psychologically. He radiated control the way fire radiated heat. "You don't belong here," he said conversationally, as if discussing weather. "Neither do most of the people in this room," she said. A few men stiffened. Luca laughed quietly. "Fair." He leaned back. "You're careful. You move like someone who expects the floor to disappear." She didn't answer. "Someone trained you," he continued. "Not in a gym, not in a street." She met his gaze. "You don't need to know that." "I don't," Luca agreed. "But I want to." Silence stretched. "You embarrassed one of my captains," he said, "in front of everyone." "He grabbed me." "He did," Luca acknowledged. "And now he won't do it again." "That wasn't my goal." "No," Luca said, "your goal was to survive." Her jaw tightened imperceptibly. "Everyone here," he went on, "is always trying to survive. Most of them are just bad at it." He leaned closer. "Tell me something. If I told my men to kill you right now, how many would die before you did?" The question was asked lightly. The room leaned in. She considered the exits, the weight of bodies, the angles of fire, the knife in her hand. Luca studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. "That's what I thought." A phone buzzed on the table. One of Luca's lieutenants glanced at it, frowned, and leaned in to whisper something in his ear. Luca's expression darkened. He stood. "Change of plans," he announced to the room. "We're done for tonight." Murmurs followed, confusion, disappointment. Luca turned back to her. "You're not going home," he said quietly. That was not a threat, it was a fact. She felt the old weight settle in her chest, the one she'd carried when the world used to end abruptly, without warning. "Why?" she asked. "Because," Luca said, eyes sharp now. "Someone just tried to kill me. And I have a feeling you noticed before anyone else did." Her gaze flicked, just for a fraction of a second, to the corner of the room where a violinist packed his instrument, with shaking hands. Too late. Luca followed her eyes. He smiled. "Good," he said. "We're going to get along very well." And for the first time in years, she understood something with absolute clarity. Disappearing was no longer an option. They didn't touch her when they escorted her out. That alone told her everything she needed to know. 2 men walked ahead, 2 behind. Not guards exactly, more like reminders. Their hands stayed visible, deliberately casual, but their spacing was precise. Close enough to react, far enough not to provoke. She matched their pace without thinking. The night air outside the restaurant was damp and cold, heavy with the smell of rain-soaked asphalt and river water drifting up from the docks. The city never slept, but it did change masks after midnight. Neon bled into puddles. Sirens wailed somewhere far enough away to be irrelevant. A black sedan waited at the curb, engine running. She stopped. "I live that way," she said, nodding toward the opposite street. One of the men glanced at Luca, who had followed them outside. Luca shook his head once. "No," he said. "Tonight, you live this way." She considered running. The calculation took less than a second. 4 armed men, close quarters, unknown streets beyond the corner. Possible, but loud. And loud meant permanent consequences. She got into the car. The interior smelled of leather and old smoke, bulletproof glass, reinforced doors. She recognized the model, the modifications. This wasn't transportation, it was a mobile bunker. The door closed. Locks engaged with a heavy final sound. Luca slid in beside her, unbothered by proximity. He rested his arm casually along the back of the seat, not touching her, but close enough to remind her that he could. The car pulled away. They drove in silence for several minutes. The city thinned, lights spacing out, buildings growing taller and darker. Industrial zones, warehouses. The parts of town where things were stored, moved, erased. "You noticed the violinist," Luca said finally. "Yes. How?" "He tuned twice," she replied. "No professional does that on stage unless they're stalling." "And the accent?" "Wrong region," she said. "Learned. Not native." Luca nodded slowly. "The gun?" "Modified," she said. "Shortened barrel, concealed in the case lining. Weight distribution was off." Luca exhaled, something like admiration flickering across his face before discipline crushed it. "You could have warned me." "I did," she said. "I spilled wine on you." He laughed quietly at that. The car slowed as it approached a gated compound, nestled between warehouses and the river. Concrete walls, cameras, armed men posted like statues at every corner. "Home," They took her inside through a side entrance, bypassing the main hall. She clocked the layout instantly. Choke points, sightlines, kill zones. The place was designed defensively, but not by amateurs. She was led into a smaller room, clean, bright, windowless. A table, 2 chairs, an interview room masquerading as hospitality. Luca dismissed the guards and sat across from her. Name, he said. She hesitated. Names had weight. Names connected pasts to futures. She said finally. A lie, but a small one. Last name? No. Luca accepted that with a shrug. Then here's what's going to happen, Eva. Someone inside my organization hired a professional to kill me tonight. That means they're desperate or stupid. Or both, she said. Usually, Luca agreed. I don't like being surprised, and I don't like wasting assets. She met his gaze. I'm not your asset. No, he said. You're a variable. Silence settled between them, thick but not hostile. Why stay, Luca asked. You could have run. You're clearly capable. She leaned back in her chair. Because you'd hunt me. Yes, and because, she continued, the man who ordered that hit won't stop until you're dead. If you die tonight or tomorrow, everyone who saw me throw that knife will remember me. And remembered people don't live long. Luca smiled. You think ahead. I've had to. He folded his hands. Then think about this. Help me find the traitor. Stay alive under my roof. When this is over, you disappear again. She studied his face, searching for deception. There was none, not because he was honest, but because he didn't bother lying about things he could control. And if I say no? She asked. Luca's smile vanished. Then you leave, and my people will assume you're involved. A threat wrapped in logic. She nodded slowly. You'll need to tighten your inner circle. I know. You'll need to change routes, routines, schedules. I already am. You'll need to trust someone you shouldn't. His eyes sharpened. That would be you. Yes. Silence again. Finally, Luca stood. You'll stay in the East Wing. No weapons. He paused. Explain. If someone comes for you, she said calmly, they won't announce it. I don't fight fair without tools. He considered this, then gestured toward the door. Give her a sidearm, he told someone unseen. Unloaded. She didn't smile. They gave her a room overlooking the river. Minimalist, clean. One entrance, one exit. Acceptable. She lay on the bed fully clothed, eyes open, listening to the building breathe. Sometime after midnight, she heard it. A soft click. Too careful. She rolled off the bed as the door opened. The man came in low, blade in hand. She disarmed him in 3 movements, breaking his wrist, taking his knife, and driving him into the wall hard enough to knock the breath from his lungs, but not kill him. She pressed the blade to his throat. Who sent you? She whispered. Fear flooded his eyes. Before he could answer, the lights came on. Luca stood in the doorway, gun raised. He took in the scene. Eva standing calm and balanced. The man pinned, bleeding, helpless. Luca lowered his weapon slowly. Looks like he said I should have given you bullets. She met his gaze. That was a test, he said. For both of us. He works for one of my cousins. Eva exhaled. Then you're already at war. Yes, Luca said quietly. And it's going to get ugly. She stepped back and let his men take the attacker. As they dragged him away, Luca turned to her. You're not invisible anymore, he said. She looked out at the river, dark and endless. I know. And somewhere deep inside, something she'd buried long ago began to wake. The first thing Eva did the next morning was change the way Luca moved. She didn't ask permission. She waited until he was halfway through his routine. Espresso at the long kitchen counter, briefing with 2 lieutenants, jacket draped over the same chair it always was. Then she interrupted. Your driver is predictable, she said. The room stilled. One lieutenant bristled. Excuse me? You leave at 9:30, Eva continued, unfazed. You take the river route on Mondays, the market route on Tuesdays. Your convoy spacing is too tight at intersections, and your lead car telegraphs turns half a second early. Luca sipped his espresso, eyes on her over the rim of the cup. And this matters because, he asked? Because if I were hired to kill you, she said, you'd already be dead. Silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. Luca set the cup down carefully. Everyone out, he said. The lieutenants hesitated, then obeyed. When the room was empty, Luca turned to her fully. You've been here less than 12 hours, he said. You've already rearranged my security. Yes. And you think that's acceptable? I think, Eva replied evenly, that whoever hired that violinist is watching how you react. If you don't change, they'll escalate. Luca studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Show me. That was how it began. They walked the compound together. Eva pointed out blind spots the cameras missed, the way the guards' attention drifted during shift changes, how the river-facing windows reflected light at night, creating silhouettes. You live like a man who hasn't been truly hunted in a while, she said. Luca didn't argue. He listened. By noon, routes were changed, schedules staggered. 2 men were reassigned, 1 was quietly removed. By evening, word spread. The waitress was no longer a curiosity, she was a problem. Not everyone liked that. At dinner, Luca's cousin Marco watched her with open dislike. Marco had inherited money and position, not competence. He smiled too much, spoke too loudly, and made a show of deference that fooled no one experienced. So, Marco said, swirling wine in his glass, you're the girl who throws knives. Eva didn't look at him. I throw objects. Marco laughed. Cute. Luca's gaze flicked toward Marco, a warning. Marco ignored it. You know, Marco continued, we have rules about outsiders, especially ones who get ideas above their station. Eva finally met his eyes. I don't want a station, she said. I want you alive long enough to be useful. A few men choked on their drinks. Marco's smile hardened. You talk big for someone who was cleaning tables yesterday. Eva leaned forward slightly. You talk loose for someone whose men keep missing their scheduled check-ins, 1 near the docks, 2 by the old rail yard. Marco stood abruptly. That's bullshit. Is it? Eva asked calmly. Then call them. Marco fumbled for his phone. No answer. Luca exhaled slowly. Sit down, he told Marco, before you embarrass yourself further. Marco sat, pale now, fury burning behind his eyes. After dinner, Luca walked with Eva through the East Wing. You didn't have to provoke him, Luca said. Yes, Eva replied. I did. Why? Because he's involved, she said. Not necessarily the architect, but a participant. He wanted me gone the moment I arrived. Luca nodded. Marco's always wanted more. Men like him, Eva said, mistake proximity for power. They stopped at a window overlooking the river. Night had fallen, the water black and moving, swallowing reflections. You're not afraid? Luca said. I am, Eva replied. I just don't let it drive. You speak like a commander. I was trained by people who didn't survive long enough to become legends. That night, the first real attempt came. No subtlety. No elegance. A car bomb detonated beneath one of Luca's warehouses across the river, fire blooming into the sky like a signal flare. Sirens followed. Phones rang. Eva watched the explosion from the window, face impassive. They're testing response time, she said. Not you. Yuka nodded. They want to see how fast I bleed, Eva added. He looked at her. And who doesn't? Within an hour, reports came in. One crew delayed, another unreachable. Patterns emerged. Eva spread maps across the table, marking routes, territories, timelines. Luca watched as she built a picture piece by piece, fingers moving with confidence born of repetition. This isn't a single faction, she said. It's a coalition, temporary, fragile. Led by? Luca asked. Someone patient, Eva replied. Someone who understands you. She paused. Or someone who thinks they do. Luca leaned back, eyes narrowing. You think this is personal? Yes. For you or for me? Later, alone in her room, Eva cleaned a borrowed pistol she'd convinced Luca to load properly. Her hands moved automatically, muscle memory precise. She caught her reflection in the darkened window. For months, she'd lived small, quiet, careful. Now the world was pushing back. And she was done retreating. Somewhere in the city, someone had decided she was an obstacle. The second assassination attempt came disguised as loyalty. It arrived in the form of a gift. A shipment of wine, rare, expensive, imported through channels Luca trusted. The bottles were sealed, labeled, documented. The paperwork was flawless, too flawless. Eva noticed it before anyone else did. She stood in the storage room, fingers brushing the crate's edge, listening to the way the glass inside responded to vibration. Her expression stayed neutral, but her body had already shifted, feet angled, spine loose, ready. These came in early, one of the handlers said proudly. From Naples. No, Eva replied. They didn't. The man frowned. The manifest is forged, Eva finished. Open one. The handler hesitated, glancing toward Luca for approval. Luca nodded. The bottle was opened carefully away from the face. The cork came free with a muted pop, and a thin wire snapped tight inside the neck, slicing into the handler's palm. He yelped, dropping the bottle. Eva moved instantly, kicking it away as liquid spilled across the floor. The scent wasn't wine, It was sharp, chemical. Clear the room, she said. Now. Men scattered. Eva knelt, examining the broken glass. Inside the bottle, nestled beneath the false base, was a compact explosive, designed to detonate with agitation. A toast bomb. Luca stared down at it, jaw clenched. They're getting closer. They're getting desperate, Eva corrected. Word spread quickly through the organization. The attacks were no longer whispers. They were loud, brazen, and people were choosing sides. Some avoided Eva entirely. Others sought her out, testing her, probing for weakness. She met each encounter with calm professionalism, never rising to bait, never retreating. But at night, when the compound quieted, Luca found her in the map room more often than not. Planning. He watched the way she thought, how she traced lines between people instead of places, how she anticipated reactions rather than moves. You don't just see the board, he said one night. You see the players' egos. They're louder than their guns, she replied. Over time, something shifted. He stopped introducing her as security. He started saying, she's with me. It mattered. Not everyone accepted it. Marco grew more erratic. His smiles tightened. His laughter came too late. Eva watched him closely. He made mistakes. Late-night calls, unscheduled meetings, glances toward the river when he thought no one was watching. One evening, Luca joined her at the window again. You were right, he said quietly, about Marco. Yes. You didn't warn me everything. No. Why? Because, Eva said, you needed to see it yourself. Trust built on borrowed certainty collapses. Luca exhaled. You speak like someone who's lost people. I've lost teams, she replied. Worse. That night Marco tried to flee. He didn't make it past the outer gate. Eva stood beside Luca as Marco was dragged into the courtyard, shouting, pleading, swearing allegiance he'd already sold. Please, Marco said, eyes wild. You don't understand. They threatened my family. So did I, Luca replied coldly. He looked to Eva. She didn't nod. She shook her head slightly. Not here, she said. Not like this. Luca hesitated. That was new. Take him inside, Eva continued. Talk to him. Learn everything. Then decide. Marco's eyes flicked to her, confusion replacing fear. Luca nodded. Do it. Hours later, Marco broke. Names spilled out. Routes, accounts, safe houses. At the center of it all, a name Luca hadn't expected. An old ally. A man Luca had once saved. The betrayal cut deep. Eva watched Luca absorb it in silence. She knew that look, the quiet recalibration of trust dying. You're going to want revenge, she said softly. Yes, Luca replied. And that's why you shouldn't lead the next move, she said. He turned to her sharply. Excuse me? You're compromised emotionally, Eva said. They know how you think. They don't know how I do. Luca studied her for a long time. Then, slowly, he smiled. Then, he said, show me how this war ends. In the days that followed, Eva took control. She rerouted shipments, fed false information, staged weakness where there was none. She let enemies believe Luca was distracted, grieving, angry. Meanwhile, she mapped their collapse. One by one, supply lines dried up. Meetings were raided. Allies vanished. No chaos, no spectacle, just quiet erasure. When the final meeting was set, neutral ground, high stakes, false truce, Luca insisted on attending. Eva allowed it, but only on her terms. As they prepared to leave, Luca adjusted his jacket and glanced at her. You could walk away after this, he said. Disappear again. She met his gaze. I won't. Why? Because, she said, someone has to make sure this doesn't happen again. Luca nodded, something like pride in his eyes. The waitress was gone. Neutral ground was a lie people told themselves to feel safe. The abandoned customs house sat at the edge of the old port, its windows boarded, its stone facade cracked by decades of salt and neglect. Once, it had been a place of records and order. Now it was where men pretended rules still applied. Eva arrived first. She insisted on it. Luca followed 10 minutes later, escorted by half the number of men he normally would have brought. It was a calculated risk, one she had designed. Appear weakened, appear exposed. The opposing faction arrived last. 3 cars, too many for trust, not enough for open war. Eva watched from the shadow of a collapsed archway, her body still, her mind racing. Every footstep echoed, every voice carried. The air smelled of rust and tidewater, undercut by oil and old smoke. She counted weapons by posture alone. Not enough, which meant the real danger wasn't visible. Inside the customs hall, a long table had been set beneath flickering lights. Luca took his seat at one end. Across from him sat the man who had betrayed him, Salvatore Rizzi, older, calmer, smarter than Marco had ever been. Luca, Salvatore said warmly, it's been too long. Not long enough, Luca replied. Eva remained standing behind Luca, head slightly bowed, the picture of a bodyguard. Salvatore's eyes flicked to her. You've upgraded. Luca smiled thinly. I hire carefully now. The conversation began with pleasantries, lies wrapped in courtesy, apologies that meant nothing, offers designed to buy time. Eva listened and waited. She noticed it halfway through, an inconsistency in Salvatore's men. One of them kept touching his ear. Another glanced toward the ceiling whenever Luca spoke. Eva's gaze drifted upward. The chandeliers were wrong. Too new. Her pulse didn't spike. It narrowed. She leaned in, murmuring in Luca's ear. Ceiling, charges, directional. Luca didn't react. He took a sip of water, buying time. Salvatore smiled. We can still fix this, Luca. Walk away. Let the city breathe. Eva shifted her stance. 3, 2, 1. She moved. Eva kicked the table sideways as the explosion tore through the ceiling. The blast was contained, directed downward, designed to kill everyone seated. But the table took the brunt. Luca was already moving, pulled by Eva's grip, their bodies hitting the floor as debris rained down. Gunfire erupted instantly, echoing deafeningly through the hall. Eva rolled, firing controlled shots. 2 men fell before they realized the plan had failed. Luca took cover, barking orders. Salvatore tried to run. Eva saw him break. She didn't chase. She shot the support beam behind him. The ceiling collapsed in his path, trapping him under stone and dust. Silence followed, broken only by coughing, groans, and the distant cry of gulls outside. Eva rose slowly, scanning, confirming. Threat neutralized. She approached Salvatore, pinned beneath rubble, blood streaking his face. He looked up at her with dawning recognition. You, he rasped. You're not his. No, Eva said. I'm the consequence of your arrogance. Luca joined her, gun still raised. Salvatore laughed weakly. You always did surround yourself with surprises. Luca's finger tightened on the trigger. Eva placed a hand on his arm. Let him live, she said quietly. Luca looked at her. Why? Because death is an end, Eva replied. This is a lesson. They left Salvatore to be found by the authorities, alive, exposed, stripped of protection. The fallout was immediate. Alliances collapsed overnight. Fear replaced ambition. Names vanished from conversations. Back at the compound, Luca poured 2 glasses of whiskey. He handed one to Eva. To you, he said. She took it but didn't drink. This doesn't end the war, she said. No, Luca agreed, but it changes who people fear. He watched her carefully. You didn't hesitate. I learned a long time ago, she said, that hesitation kills more people than violence. Luca nodded slowly. You're not just protecting me anymore. No, Eva said. I'm reshaping the board. That night, Luca couldn't sleep. He stood on the balcony, watching the river slide past like a living thing. Eva joined him. You could have taken his place, he said suddenly. She raised an eyebrow. Whose? Mine. She considered that. Not yet. He smiled. Yet something unspoken settled between them then. Not romance, not ownership. And respect in their world was the rarest currency of all. Power announced itself in silence. After the customs house, the city shifted. Not loudly, not all at once, but in the subtle ways that mattered. Meetings were postponed. Shipments were rerouted without explanation. Men who used to speak freely began choosing their words with care. And when Eva entered a room, conversations stopped. She noticed it the first time someone stood up for her without being told. A dock supervisor, old, scarred, loyal only to survival, rose when she approached, nodding once before sitting again. No smile, no fear, just acknowledgement. She hadn't asked for that. She hadn't earned it through bloodshed or speeches. She had earned it through competence. Luca watched these changes with a mix of satisfaction and caution. You're becoming visible, he told her one evening as they reviewed reports in his office. Yes. That's dangerous. So is being underestimated, she replied. He smiled faintly. I used to rely on fear. Fear is loud, Eva said. It fades. Dependence lasts longer. He leaned back, considering that. Not everyone welcomed the change. A smaller family, long suppressed under Luca's dominance, made a move. They didn't target Luca. They targeted Eva. The ambush came on a narrow street near the river, where sound carried and shadows pooled. Eva had insisted on walking instead of using the car, another calculated risk. The first shot missed, the second didn't. The round grazed her shoulder, tearing fabric and skin. Pain flared hot and sharp, but she stayed upright, already moving. She ducked into an alley, drew her weapon, and returned fire with measured precision. One attacker dropped, another fled. She advanced, not chasing blindly, but herding him into a dead end. When Luca's men arrived, it was over. Eva leaned against the brick wall, breathing controlled, blood soaking through her sleeve. Luca pushed past his guards, eyes scanning her rapidly. "You're hit." "Barely," she said. "They were amateurs." His jaw tightened. "They still drew blood," she said. "Not like that." Back at the compound, the medic stitched her shoulder. Eva didn't flinch. Luca watched from the doorway, silent. Later, when they were alone, he spoke. "They went after you to get to me, yes. You're becoming leverage." "No," Eva corrected. "I'm becoming a shield." He frowned. "Those are not the same. When you don't break." He poured himself a drink, then stopped. "You could leave," he said again, "before this consumes you." Eva looked at him steadily. It already did. He studied her face, searching for doubt. "Found none. Then we stop pretending," Luca said. "From now on, you're not behind me." "Good," Eva replied. "I work better beside." The next council meeting was the first test. Luca brought her openly. No uniform, no pretense. She wore a tailored dark suit, simple, severe. A weapon hidden, another visible. Men stared. Some smiled thinly, others stiffened. One spoke out. "Since when does a guest sit at the table?" Luca didn't answer. Eva did. "Since survival became collaborative," she said. The man scoffed. "And who are you supposed to be?" Eva met his gaze calmly. "I'm the reason the last 3 attempts on Luca failed." Silence fell. She continued, unhurried. "I'm also the reason the next one won't happen." A murmur rippled through the room. Luca watched something shift, an invisible line crossing, an old order quietly dying. By the end of the meeting, alliances had realigned, not around Luca, around her. That night, Luca stood alone in his office, looking at a photograph on his desk. His father, younger, harder, staring into a future that had never imagined someone like Eva. Eva knocked once and entered. "You're thinking too much," she said. "Yes," Luca replied. "About legacy." She crossed the room. "Legacies fail when they don't adapt." He turned to her. "And what do you want yours to be?" She considered the question longer than he expected. "To end cycles," she said finally, "not rule them." He nodded slowly. "That's why you're dangerous, and why you're still alive," she replied. Outside, the city listened, and for the first time in years, it heard a different kind of power. Power always invited tests. They came disguised as negotiations, as favors, as warnings meant to sound helpful. Eva recognized them all for what they were, attempts to measure her reach, her patience, her limits. She answered none of them directly. Instead, she listened, and when she moved decisively. The city's smaller families began approaching Luca with offers that all contained the same subtext. "Distance her, and we'll talk." They didn't say her name. They didn't have to. Luca refused them all, not out of loyalty, out of calculation. Eva had stabilized something he'd spent years controlling through fear alone. Crime thrived in chaos, but empires didn't. What she offered was order, cold, precise, sustainable. That terrified people. The next threat came from outside the city, a syndicate from across the water, old, disciplined, untouched by recent bloodshed, sent an emissary, a man with manners, scars, and a reputation for ending wars by starting worse ones. He requested a meeting. Eva advised against it. "Not yet," she said. "He wants to see if I speak for you." "And do you?" Luca asked. She didn't answer immediately. "I speak for survival," she said finally. "Sometimes that overlaps." The meeting was set at a private estate overlooking the hills. Neutral territory again. Another lie. Eva insisted on controlling security. The emissary arrived alone. That worried her more than an entourage would have. He was polite, complimented the wine, asked about the weather. Then he looked at Eva. "You're not what I expected," he said. "Then your expectations are outdated," she replied. He smiled. "You're efficient. That makes you temporary." Eva tilted her head slightly. "People who mistake efficiency for disposability don't last long." The emissary's eyes flicked to Luca. "She speaks like an equal." "She is," Luca said without hesitation. The emissary leaned back. "Then here is my offer. Step aside, let the old rules return, the city will be calmer." Eva laughed softly. "No," she said. The emissary's smile faded. "This will end badly. For you," Eva replied. He left shortly after. Within 48 hours, violence erupted along the docks. Coordinated, surgical, designed to provoke escalation. Luca's men responded instinctively, pushing back hard. Eva stopped them. "Not yet," she said. "Let them commit." She watched patterns emerge. Who attacked where, who hesitated, who held back. By the third day, she had her list. On the fourth, she struck, not with gunfire, with information. Bank accounts frozen, safe houses exposed, couriers intercepted quietly by authorities, tipped off anonymously. Ships delayed, then seized. The syndicate's pressure collapsed without a single direct confrontation. The emissary sent another message. This one contained respect. Luca watched Eva read it, then burn it without comment. You could have negotiated power, he said. I already have it, but you don't claim it. I don't need to, Eva said. They feel it. That night, Luca realized something unsettling. He no longer knew how to run the city without her. She wasn't replacing him. She was redefining what leadership looked like. Men didn't follow her because she demanded it. They followed because she solved problems before they became catastrophes. When Luca asked her why she never sat at the head of the table, she gave him a look that bordered on pity. Frowns make you visible, she said. I prefer gravity. But gravity, he knew, shaped everything around it. The city grew quieter. Not safer, never that. But quieter in the way a predator-filled forest goes still when something larger moves through it. Violence didn't vanish. It became deliberate, measured, approved or denied before it happened. Eva noticed the change before Luca did. She always did. It came in the pauses, the delayed phone calls, the way men waited for confirmation before acting on instincts that once ruled them. They were learning restraint, not because they feared punishment, but because they feared miscalculation. Because of her. That kind of power came with a cost. The first sign was exhaustion. Eva slept less, ate only when reminded. Her mind refused rest, cycling through contingencies, probabilities, shadow wars that never fully ended. She could feel the strain in her joints, the old injuries whispering at night. Luca noticed the shadows under her eyes. You're burning yourself down, he said one evening. She didn't look up from the map spread across the table. I'll stop when it's stable. It will never be stable, Luca said. She paused at that. He was right. There would always be someone testing the edges, probing for weakness. The only difference now was how quickly those probes died. That was her doing. The second sign came in the form of a child. A boy, maybe 10 years old, was found hiding near one of Luca's warehouses. No weapon, no device, just a note in his pocket, with a name Eva recognized. An enemy lieutenant's son. A message. Eva read the report twice, her face unreadable. They're testing your limits, Luca said quietly. Seeing if you're human. Eva closed the folder. Release him, she said. Luca frowned. Without consequence? With protection, Eva replied. Make it public. Let them know children are off limits. That makes us predictable. No, Eva said. It makes us principled. Luca studied her carefully. You believe that? Why? She met his gaze. Because once you justify everything, there's nothing you won't do. The boy was returned unharmed. The city took note. Some called it weakness. Most called it mercy. Eva didn't care what they called it, as long as they understood the line. The third sign came closer to home. An internal betrayal. Not Marco. Not Salvatore. Someone quieter. A logistics coordinator Eva had trusted. The ambush was nearly successful. A sniper round cracked through the air as Eva crossed an open courtyard. She felt the wind of it, heard the whine as it shattered stone inches from her head. She didn't panic. She dropped, rolled, and returned fire with brutal efficiency, triangulating the shooter's position from sound and echo alone. The sniper escaped, but the message was clear. She was no longer an idea. She was a target. That night, Luca found her cleaning her weapon with more force than necessary. You should let others take more risk, he said. She didn't answer. She looked up sharply. Neither are you. Yet you keep putting yourself in front. Yes, why, he pressed. She considered him for a long moment. Because, she said slowly, if I don't, someone less careful will, and they'll die. Luca exhaled. You don't have to carry this alone. She tilted her head. Can you? He didn't answer. Silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, but heavy. Finally, Luca spoke. When this is over, what do you see? Eva looked past him toward the city lights beyond the window. I see a system that doesn't need me, she said. That's the goal. And you? He asked. She hesitated. I don't know, she admitted. The admission surprised them both. For the first time since she'd thrown the knife, Eva didn't have a clear exit mapped. And that uncertainty was more dangerous than any enemy. Power never surrendered quietly. When the city realized Eva wasn't leaving, wasn't burning out, wasn't making a fatal mistake, the resistance hardened. Opportunists disappeared. What remained were professionals. People who didn't rush. People who planned years ahead. People like her. The counterstrike didn't come with gunfire, it came with legitimacy. An investigation began. Financial irregularities, zoning violations, anonymous tips funneled through clean channels. The language was bureaucratic, bloodless, and infinitely harder to fight. Luca's operations slowed under scrutiny. Containers sat unopened at ports. Licenses stalled. Couriers were questioned, then questioned again. The city's legal system hadn't suddenly grown a conscience. Someone was paying for pressure. Eva understood the play immediately. "They're trying to box us into visibility," she said. "Force mistakes." Luca rubbed his temples. "They want me reacting emotionally." "They want you choosing speed over precision," Eva replied. He looked at her. "And you?" "They want me stepping into the light." That was the real danger. Eva had always operated in margins, shadows, redundancies, untraceable influence. If she became the face of resistance, the war would simplify. Simplified wars ended with arrests or funerals. She didn't intend to provide either. Instead, she went quiet. For 2 weeks, Eva stopped appearing in public. She delegated ruthlessly, narrowed her communications, spoke only to Luca and 2 others she trusted implicitly. Rumors spread quickly. Some said she'd fled. Others said Luca had sidelined her. Both lies were useful. While the city speculated, Eva worked. She dismantled the pressure campaign piece by piece, not by opposing it, but by redirecting it. Anonymous evidence appeared, pointing investigators toward real corruption. Adjacent families, unaffiliated syndicates, shell corporations that had overreached. The legal machine turned, hungry for visible success. It found new targets. Within days, the pressure eased. Luca watched it unfold with awe he didn't bother hiding anymore. "You're fighting a war without bullets," he said. "They're louder," Eva replied. "Bullets make martyrs. Paper makes prisoners." The retaliation came anyway. One night, as rain hammered the compound and the river swelled against its banks, the power went out. Eva was already moving before the generators kicked in. She met the first intruder in the hallway, breaking his neck silently and catching his body before it hit the floor. A second followed seconds later, disarmed, incapacitated, alive but useless. The attack was coordinated, skilled, quiet, not local. Eva reached Luca's office just as the door exploded inward. She fired through smoke, controlled bursts, forcing the attackers back long enough to pull Luca into the adjacent safe room. The firefight lasted less than 3 minutes. When it ended, 4 bodies lay still. 2 more had escaped. Eva stood amid the wreckage, chest rising and falling steadily, blood splattered across her sleeve, none of it hers. Luca stared at her, adrenaline still flooding his system. "They came for you," he said. "They came for control," Eva corrected. "I just happened to be holding it." He stepped closer, lowering his weapon. "You should leave," he said quietly, "before this consumes you completely." She looked at him then, really looked, at the man who had built an empire on instinct and force, who had learned, reluctantly, to trust something quieter. "If I leave now," she said, "everything fractures. You know that." "Yes," Luca admitted, "and I hate that." She nodded. "So do I." He studied her face, searching for hesitation, for the exit she always carried. For the first time, there was none. "Then stop protecting me," Luca said suddenly. "Let me carry some of this." Eva frowned. "You'll get yourself killed." "Maybe," he said, "but I won't let you disappear under the weight of my world." Silence stretched between them. Then Eva exhaled slowly. "Fine," she said. "We share it." The decision changed everything. Eva began preparing Luca to function without her constant intervention. She trained his lieutenants differently. Less fear, more competence. She reduced redundancies, streamlined chains of command, removed anyone who relied too heavily on her presence to act. It was painful, necessary. The final move came quietly. Eva arranged a summit, not between criminals, but between stabilizers, figures who wanted longevity over chaos, people tired of constant war. Luca attended, Eva did not. Her absence spoke louder than her presence ever had. The agreement that emerged didn't bear her name, but it bore her design. That night, Luca stood alone in the compound courtyard, looking at the city beyond the walls. Eva joined him. "It's done," he said. "Almost," she replied. He turned to her. "What's left?" She met his gaze, calm and unflinching. "The part where I decide what I am now." The city felt different when Eva stopped moving through it like a shadow. It wasn't that she became public. She didn't give interviews. She didn't attend ceremonies. She didn't sit at the head of tables or accept titles whispered by men who thought naming something meant controlling it. But she stopped hiding. And that, in their world, was seismic. Luca noticed it in the smallest things. The way Eva walked now, still alert, still precise, but no longer shrinking herself to pass unnoticed. The way she spoke in meetings, no longer deflecting authority, but wearing it naturally, without apology. Men listened, not because Luca demanded it, because Eva spoke only when it mattered. The summit she'd engineered rippled outward, stabilizing trade routes, dampening long-standing feuds, creating something dangerously close to equilibrium. No one called it peace, but the gunfire slowed. Luca found himself less exhausted, less reactive. For the first time in decades, he slept through the night. Eva did not. Her dreams returned, old ones, cold ground, radio static, names spoken once and never again. She woke before dawn, sitting upright, hand already searching for a weapon. One morning, Luca found her in the gym, striking a heavy bag with controlled brutality. "You don't need to prove anything," he said. "I'm not," she replied between blows. "I'm remembering who I was." He leaned against the wall. "And who is that?" She stopped, resting her forehead briefly against the bag. "Someone who never planned to survive this long," she said. That honesty unsettled him more than any weapon ever had. The final challenge came from within. A group of lieutenants, old guard, loyal to Luca but wary of change, approached him privately. They didn't threaten, they reasoned. "She's too central," they said. "If she leaves, everything collapses. If she stays, we become dependent." They weren't wrong. Luca listened without interruption. Then he told Eva. She didn't react immediately. Later that night she stood alone in the map room, staring at the city laid out in lines and symbols. Luca joined her quietly. "They're right," she said finally. "About dependency." "You built this to outlive you," Luca said. "Yes," Eva replied, "but I didn't plan on being part of it." He crossed his arms. "And now?" She turned to him. "Now they need to see me choose this, not you." "What does that mean?" "It means," Eva said, "I stop being your advisor." Luca stiffened. "And become?" She held his gaze. "Your equal." The words hung between them, heavy with consequence. Luca studied her face for a long moment, searching for ambition, for hunger. He found only resolve. "I never wanted a queen," he said slowly. "I never wanted a throne," Eva replied. They shared a look that acknowledged the lie in both statements. The announcement was made the next day, not grand, not dramatic. Luca introduced Eva as his partner. In responsibility. No titles, no ceremony, just fact. Some men bristled, most adapted, because the alternative was chaos. Eva addressed the room only once. "I won't lead through fear," she said calmly. "I won't tolerate betrayal, and I won't stay if this becomes about ego, instead of survival." Her gaze swept the room. "Those are my terms." No one challenged them. That night, Luca poured 2 glasses of whiskey again. "To choosing," he said. Eva clinked her glass against his. "To staying," she replied. But even as power settled around her like a crown she hadn't asked for, Eva knew one truth remained. The quiet ones were only feared when they stopped pretending they weren't watching. Power did not announce itself when Eva finally claimed it. There was no ceremony, no declaration, no blood spilled in public to mark the moment. The city didn't wake up one morning to headlines or rumors of a new ruler. It simply adjusted. Meetings began on time. Territory disputes ended with conversation instead of gunfire. Men who once postured, now prepared. Eva had designed it that way. She understood something most never did. Dominance wasn't about being seen at the center. It was about shaping the gravity everyone else moved within. Luca felt the change most sharply. He had expected resistance, challenges, some final test of loyalty or ambition. Instead, he found himself relieved. For years, he had carried the weight of every decision alone, knowing that weakness, real or perceived, invited annihilation. Eva didn't remove that burden. She redistributed it. Decisions became systems. Systems became habits. Habits became culture. And culture outlived people. One evening, weeks after the announcement, Luca stood on the balcony overlooking the river, watching the city lights ripple across the water. Eva joined him without a word, standing beside him, rather than behind. "You know," Luca said quietly, "they don't come to me first anymore." "No," Eva replied. "They come to the process." He smiled faintly. "And yours?" he asked. She was silent for a moment. "I used to believe disappearing was survival," she said. Then I learned that leaving nothing behind just means someone worse fills the space. Luca turned to look at her. So you stayed. I stayed, Eva said, to make sure the space held. Below them the city breathed. Slow, controlled, alive. Threats still existed. But now they were contained, anticipated, diffused before they metastasized into war. Eva no longer intercepted every danger herself. She trained others to see what she saw, to think before acting, to value restraint as much as strength. Some learned. Those who didn't were quietly removed. Not out of cruelty, out of necessity. The last test came months later when an ambitious outsider attempted to rally dissent, whispering that Eva had softened the city, that fear was gone, that power had weakened. Eva invited him to speak, privately. He arrived confident, rehearsed, expecting negotiation. He left shaken, stripped not of life, but of illusion. By morning his supporters had vanished, not executed, not arrested, simply isolated, cut off from resources, relevance, and momentum. The rebellion collapsed without a single shot fired. That was when the city understood. Fear had not disappeared. It had matured. Late one night, Luca found Eva alone in the map room, the same place where everything had once begun. The maps were still there, but they were no longer marked with urgency. No red lines, no contingency arrows, just structure. It would still hold. Eva looked at the city one last time. Yes, she said, it would. But you won't, he added. She smiled faintly. No. Why? Because Eva said, this isn't about control anymore. It's about stewardship. Luca nodded, accepting what he'd known for some time. She hadn't become his shadow. She had become the axis. And in that quiet truth lay the final lesson the city would never forget. The most dangerous person in the room isn't the loudest, isn't the cruelest, isn't even the one in charge. It's the one who waits, learns, endures, and then decides to stay. Eva had begun as someone no one noticed. A waitress, a ghost, a woman men talked over and pushed aside. She ended as something else entirely, not a queen by title, not a boss by proclamation, but the steady hand that kept the city alive. And once the quiet one chooses not to disappear, the world has no choice but to listen. Final reflection. Never underestimate the quiet one. Hidden power grows strongest in silence. Respect earned through competence lasts longer than fear demanded by force. And survival, when guided by discipline instead of ego, becomes dominion. If this story pulled you in, if you believe true power is built, not inherited, like the video. Subscribe for more long-form cinematic dark dramas.